everyone, this is Rick Morgan, and here's an interview with Edward. He didn't say his last name in the video, so I don't want to give it away in case it's something he wanted to keep secret. So please enjoy another episode of Tales of the Tales.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
okay, what's your say your name and where you're from, and
I'm Edward.
everybody knows me.
I live in Henderson, Nevada. I was originally from the East Coast, which is where I was like 13 years old, and I started working at New England Comics, and I got a work permit as a kid,
Oh
so I
wow,
worked there well before I was legally allowed to. But I got permission from everybody involved. I'm not sure that you could work at a comic store at 13 anymore, but I actually got paid in actual money and not just in comics, though. I did,
in
of
currency,
course.
not in specie. Yeah,
My God.
exactly.
But I think one of the first like smart acquisitions I made was when like the Punisher miniseries came out, and
So what year is
Mike
this? This is late '80s.
was that? Yeah, it was probably like '86. Be my guess is that first limited series came out, which said one of four, and then it was actually five issues. But that was the first time that I got smart to the idea of finding the first appearance of a character. And remember those ads that they had inside that listed all these old back issues that you could get for like a quarter or something along those lines. They were really
Totally.
cheap, but they would list the exact issues that they had. And I don't recall how I figured it out, but I knew that his first appearance of the Punisher was Amazing Spider-Man number 129. And I tracked it down in one of these little cheap little yellow ads inside one of the books. And I picked it up for 75 cents.
Whoa.
And it ended up being, when I finally got it graded years later, it was a 5.5. I just sold it during the pandemics to, make enough money to survive, basically. But that was one of the first acquisitions I made of that nature.
You
Um,
held on to it for 30 years, it
I
sounds
held
like.
on to it the entire time. I held on to everything I actually have. I still have books that I had when I worked at the store. When I went off to college, I went to University of Arizona when I was 17 and located an LCS that I had to ride my bike there. It was the only way to get there. And it was in, Tucson. It's hot as hell. So
Yeah. What's that? The
I
Sun
would,
Devils, right? Yeah.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
the Wildcats. Is it the Arizona Wildcats? I don't remember. I was not a big football fan, but no, the Sun Devils was up in Phoenix. But
Right. Oh, I see.
I would ride my 15 speed bike to this LCS, and they would have back issues of Amazing Spider-Man starting at number 37. So I picked up that. I picked up like a number 57, and from like 149 all the way up to whatever the most current issue was. And I would literally fill my backpack up with these books and ride in like 110-degree weather, like 10 miles back to school. I'd go there to get books. I'd ride them back, and it was 75 cents a book.
Wow, that's good because
Yeah.
37, that's the last Ditko book, and it's also the first appearance of Norman Osborn. So that's a nice key to
So
pick
yeah,
up,
I
right?
picked up some real winners back then. But yeah, Spider-Man was the jam for me back then.
Yeah, man. So what do you collect now?
Oh man, I'd literally just started to get back into stuff with the pandemic, incidentally, since I was, had to shelter in place. I was looking for stuff to do, and I had three short boxes that I had carried around for me for all these 30 years. I had like a Hulk 340 in there, had all the McFarlane Spider-Mans, had the Dark Knight Returns. I mean, all that, all the good stuff, like all the good Frank Miller stuff from the late 80s. And so anyway, that has nothing to do with what I have now, right? But that's what got me
Right.
back into it, is that I started to see what the value of my collection was, and the fact that I had like all these gems that were considered gems now, but at the time they were just normal issues, right? Which often
Mhm.
happens, but I mean, it happens really fast now. So I'm just starting to get into Nottingham. Picked up some. Um, what's the well, Something is Killing the Children, of course,
Oh
got me
yeah, of course.
interested. I mean, I love me a good horror book. So going down that, I think Bunny Mask just came out, and I'm just trying out a lot of new stuff because, like I said, I'm just coming back into this. I only started even doing pressings and that type of thing like a month and a half ago. Is how long
Oh,
I've been in it.
yeah.
But I do have a horror story.
Oh, okay, let's have it.
I have a horror story. I was visiting family on the East Coast, and I had a collection of Transformers from Marvel, the very beginning. I had a full run of that, in addition to the UK series that I had somehow picked up as well. And I mailed it from myself to myself when I lived in LA. And when it got to LA, I got a box filled with one of those cheap radios with the detachable speakers, and that's all that was in the box. So somebody at the Postal Service stole my entire collection with their media mail. We can go through your stuff policy. So don't send stuff media mail if you care about it. This is just a little warning. But yeah, the whole Transformers collection just off the map, gone.
You know what I remember about that Transformers collection is that I believe it was a limited series first.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
I lived in Junction City, Oregon at the time, and the Autobot ship crashed in Eugene, Oregon, which was right next door, and we somehow made it on the map. They also made it look like a sprawling metropolis, which it was nothing like.
It was not.
Exactly. But I was pretty excited about that, and I also remember this was the first time I was not able to really suspend my disbelief in reading. There you go, sweet. I was not able to suspend my disbelief reading Transformers.
But yeah, this is some of my work from last night, the other night.
Oh, sweet.
You get a number one again.
Yeah.
But anyway, please continue your story.
I couldn't swallow the thing. I couldn't swallow because at the time when you don't have a lot of comic books, you'll read anything, right? And you're like, this is good in some way. I'll just kind of accept it. But heck, we watched Airwolf about like warring helicopters on TV.
Airwolf,
right?
my God.
Right? So I'm like, okay, there's this two competing groups of like, living, sentient robots. And one of them is called the Decepticons. And they somehow convinced the US government that they're the good guys and they need to chase after the Autobots and hunt them down.
Mm-hmm.
And they run around with some humans, to help them. I'm like, look, man, if you're going to call yourself the Decepticons, it's some really bad marketing. Like, you look like
right. It's in the name.
Right, exactly. It's just like Autobots.
How do they not figure this out? That they're deceiving you.
We're the Decepticons, but counterintuitively we're the good guys. So I thought that was what I just.
That's how it works,
swallow.
Isn't it? You say that you're the good guy, and you name yourself a bad guy. It's too obvious.
Right, exactly. So hey, what can I do to help you with your clean? I see you have a press or two presses, maybe possibly behind you there. And they're the clamshell type, right? The full
I got these before I saw your recommendation to have I already had these. So
right. But here's why I don't like them. I don't like them if you're careful. It's okay, but I don't like them for two reasons. One is that the pressures they can mount are really high, and if you get a load cell, they're higher at the back than the front. So you can pop a staple, which I've seen happen, which is heartbreaking, right? Another reason I don't like them is that I like it when the book comes the upper part, the heated part, can come straight up away from the book, so it can't take the cover with it and open it as it's.
I haven't had that happen. I have not had that happen, but I have noticed that when I look at it and see where the pressure is, that sometimes it's a little backloaded, right? So I tend to move the book forward a little bit on the platter.
If that happens, I take the upper board and I scoot it forward about an inch or 2 inches, so it's sticking out of the front if I have an upper metal board. And that'll redistribute the pressure. It angles the board will kind of sandwich open a little bit on the front, but what it will do is it'll alleviate, it'll more even out the pressure if you just scoot it forward. Yeah.
And that's a good thing that you can actually see it if you look at it from the side. Obviously, the over the top one is the ideal, and I don't know why I didn't get that one, but it's too late now. It's too late.
You're just gonna deal with it, right?
I'm gonna deal with it for now, and we'll see if I add a third press at some point, because there's at least 2 to 4 go through those in any given day.
You don't have to. Here's one tip I'll give you. Something I've been working on. I'm working on a system where I can do 96 books at one time. Press. I'm 96 books at once. It's a big walk-in oven type of deal, a chamber that I'm working on. and I'm building special boards. Yeah, I'm buying a lot of equipment. I'm doing some welding. It's taking me a while, and the first couple tries weren't great and cost me a couple $1,000. So I'm still working on it, getting there. But what I do is there's some rails. You can't really see it, but there's some rails on the bottom of some I-beams on the bottom of this one. They're hard. Pick it up a little bit. Can you see those rails there a little bit? There's aluminum rails.
But yeah, I can see them. Yeah.
Yeah, they come out, and this whole thing. You see, it slides on the rails.
Yep.
I can adjust it. And so I can buy I-beams. These are 3-inch I-beams, 4-inch, 2-inch I-beams, and I can attach them. But what I do is if I make those smaller and I make this hole higher, I can just keep stacking books up on these 12 by 15 boards going up, and I can give it a lot of pressure. And I can just make a bunch at once. So I don't have to buy a bunch. The problem is getting all the boards hot at the same time. And so I'm working with pressure cells and load cells to do it, because I don't want the outer boards to have, is there such a thing as too much time at too much heat? There is, especially with Silver Age books, because the colors can fade. But so what I've been doing is taking the whole lot. I've got some other boards that I'm working on that have a couple eye loops on the outside, and I'm putting some bolts and bolting the whole package together like a sandwich. And then I put it in an oven as a stack. And then I take the whole stack and put it in here and compress it. So the whole thing's preheated equally. And so still there's a little bit of a heat sink issue. So I'm working on it, but I need to keep a bigger air gap and use convection to force the heat through the book so they all heat more uniformly. I got a bunch of thermocouples and stuff. I'm working on it. But anyway, my goal is to get 96 books at a time. And so yeah, I haven't done that many. I'm up to like 24. So I don't have a great start, but I did 131 books in 4 days recently, after work. So
you're insane.
That's just how I roll,
I understand. I'm happy to get up to 4 in a day. That's, considering nobody's sending me their books. I'm working on mine. That's fine, and before I got the chamfered boards, I had worked on, what was it, a ASM 293, and it still had some ticks on it. So I just went through that and went over that again with the boards. And that's actually one of the ones that is just cold pressing in there now. But in terms of, what to do and what to work on, I was the one that just left that comment on your video. I'm Ed Vegas on there. So that's me. I'm sure you put it together by now.
Yeah, I just did. When I saw your name here, I thought, oh, okay, that's who that is.
Yeah. But I am interested in, some of the chemistry stuff. Right.
Now we're talking.
It's like the pressing is fine. I think I overpressed one of my books, and that's the one with the sunken staples in it. That was one of the few times I've actually used the chamfered boards in the press, and I think I probably had just used a little too much pressure compared to how I used to press them, which was, I think I had 65 pounds underneath the front and the back cover, and a magazine size board in the center is the standard.
Yeah, I use around 60
on the
pounds,
top and bottom.
But sometimes I go down to like 15 or 20 pounds. I hear so many people tell me, even now, if I post this video, they're going to say, oh, you don't have enough pressure. You need to get all those tiny wrinkles out of there. And I would say, it is not true. You do not require that much pressure.
No.
Right? And more pressure is not the answer to the problem.
No. Like, maybe just pancake it down. Just crush it. Just crush it. No, it doesn't work like that.
That myth persists, and it also makes it worse in some cases, because you'll if you don't press it very evenly, you'll instill a tendency to convect or convex the board, the book entirely. Look at like a bow shape to it, because you've got too much tension or too much tensile stress. Because this is a fiber. These are fibers that act like a solid, and you can induce this stuff. You don't need a lot of pressure. You need some pressure. You need some heat to retrain it. But listen, a rubber band, for example, right? If you stretch a rubber band out really hard, rubber bands may be a bad example because the way that the polymers work, but you pull it, if you pull it with more pressure out to this distance, is it more at that distance, right? It isn't, it's the same distance, right? So if you just make something flat, does more pressure make it flatter is the question? No.
It's already flat.
It doesn't. As long as you've overcome the ability of the paper to curl on its own, it's okay. But they say, oh, we're getting to the micro. So we call them micro, meso, and macro surface anomalies, right? In the
Hmm.
paper. So the macro ones are those huge wavies that you get that pressing has nothing to do with those, because everybody takes a book out, it's still a wavy, right? So it has nothing on that scale of the whole book, it does zero. So you're looking at the meso and the micro stuff, right? And so meso stuff's easy. That needs like a pound, right? There's no 2 pounds. There's almost no pressure at all required. It's the micro
Hmm.
stuff, which is those fine little things. And more pressure does help those to a limit. But at the
Hmm.
point that the limit isn't doing it, that's not going to do it more. What you have to do is you have to make the paper, you have to remove some of its strength and make it weaker temporarily. You make it weaker
Hmm.
temporarily using a humidity chamber, which I don't like, or I use steaming, which I prefer. And I
Hmm.
actually rarely do either. If you
Hmm.
end up getting a book wet and you wet clean it first, there's enough residual moisture on that book to weaken it for a while that
Yeah.
it will press a lot
Yeah,
nicer.
I've
Just
noticed
do
that.
that.
I very rarely have a reason to steam it or even, localize humidity if I've wet cleaned it. It's good
Yeah,
to go. Yeah,
that's
I
exactly
know.
right. Pro tip for you: wet clean it on the inside too, even if it doesn't need it. The
Hmm.
book will come out really flat. Or if the book ends up curling up in the corners when you're done, just take a little bit of water on one of your pads, wipe it on the
Hmm.
bottom of that. It'll flatten out instantly.
Will
Let it
it?
dry and press it again, and it won't be 10 seconds before it flattens, because you've induced a capillary action that will put tension on the paper one way or another. If you wet it on the other, you'll just see it drop. The corner will just drop flat down, and then you just let it dry. I slide a couple of chopsticks or Q-tips under, let it air dry for 15 minutes, and then I
Right, I've
press
seen
it.
you do that. Yeah.
And it makes it just like dead nuts flat across the whole thing. You're equalizing the differences because you've removed moisture from one side of the book that you haven't
Hmm.
removed as much of on the other side. And people will
Right.
say, oh, there's nothing you can do, just press it forever and ever. Well, technically that's true, but you can also just get it wet and you're done in half an hour. It's
Yeah,
flat again.
let's be done.
Right. Yeah, if you
And that's
understand, you
the
think
other
about
point.
it.
There's a huge difference between, when you flatten it and then there's crushing it.
And if you want to lose
It's
a staple, that's what you do. The question is, okay, why not just turn it on full blast? Could I just put 2,000 pounds? Paper's not going to crush. Well, no, but your staples will definitely bend eventually.
Mhm.
Also, here's what will happen is not so much in older books, but newer books, you'll start to get ink transfer from the book to, the paper that's touching it, to the board, to
Mhm.
other pages. They'll stick
Yeah.
together. And if it's high enough pressure, some of the gases and liquids in the fibers will migrate from one side to the other, and then the pages will kind of not be stuck together. You can actually get them, but you'll notice that the pages are kind of hard. They're like a little bit
Yeah.
hard to bend.
Yeah, I've
And
just
those are the
started
things
doing
you can do.
modern books. I haven't touched any until just recently. And yeah, with the digital stickers in there. Oh man. And
Right.
yeah, I
Those
did
are tough.
notice that happen on one. I was just doing a quick press on, one side, then I was going to flip it, and then I had done it, I think at 160 or 165 or just 5 minutes, and flipped it after 2 hours and done the same thing. And right around on the back side of the page that had the sticker, that stuck to the paper that I had put in there to be a buffer. And I was the next time I did it, I put SRP on top of that in addition to the piece of paper I put in there as the buffer. But that stuck and it definitely tore part of the page and I was not happy.
Yeah. And that happens. It happens. I've noticed it just in the last year. Ink has gotten so much cheaper. Ink takes a long time to dry. I've had ink that was a year old, was actually still wet. Like if you take FTIR, which is a Fourier transform infrared spectrometer, and you measure it, because normally that there shouldn't be that much water on the surface, but there's a huge water band. And I'm like, first of all, they're using water-based ink now, which is better for the environment, but it takes forever to dry. And if you
Hmm.
press it, it's still wet. It takes a long time. So I will preheat. I'll sometimes put them in the oven at a low temperature, like 105, 110 for a couple hours, just to help dry the ink before I press it.
Hmm.
Or I make sure I go lower pressure at a longer time. And a lot of times it's our lower temperature and lower pressure. So I make, like, we're talking like 20 pounds and like 125 degrees, but for like 3,600 seconds, 1,800 seconds, so in that range that I'll press them. And my books sometimes look like a freaking accordion, because I have
Mm-hmm.
so many pages, because I'll just put paper between everything.
Every single page.
Yeah, every single page. I'll have like 30 sheets of paper. When I do that, I find actually that it actually is sometimes better, but this is a lot harder. It's a lot more work to actually press the book flat, to lay it out and push it straight down and put like huge pieces of paper on either side of it. There's less chance of the little sticker thing like pressing through the whole book, because it's just lay the whole thing out like this, and I press the whole thing flat, and then I reform the spine later. It's a lot of extra work to do that.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
But it's like the book doesn't allow, because the book's thinner, there's less pressure overall if you don't have that finer control over it. And the heat gets through the book quicker because the book's not as thick.
Right, because little it's so thin.
Right. I put these thin thermocouples in there. And the trick is as soon as the middle temperature gets to like 125, I'm off. I turn it off. Well, that happens a lot quicker when the book's half as thick, right? And so there's less chance. What you want to do is just get all the pages warm before any of the ink starts to migrate. So you want the heat to make the paper supple, but you don't want to initiate ink transfer. So you want the pages to get hot quick, but not, stay there for a long time. And so that's the trick with those. Yeah, it is hard because then you have to reform the whole thing's a big pancake. And then you have to like reform the spine over I have a special spine shaped router, one of your cold press boards like you have. I have a special one that looks just like a spine in the middle. And I force it over that. And then I'll have a couple of these, like those brown office clips with some bit of silicone on them, like RTV. And I pinch the book, and then I put it in there and I pinch just the spine part. No heat, just pressure. And I leave it in overnight. Then I slide that out and then I reform it. And then everything, it looks pretty good, but I spend an amount of time on those books that a normal person wouldn't want to invest, right?
I'm glad you admit you're not normal.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I get into this stuff, and then here's the thing, a little bit of history for you, and is that I was doing this for a long time, and I thought I was like the worst person at it because I ruined like a lot of books. But I also realized quickly that I had, I think, a year in 2019 November, by like just reckoning, not exact count, I'd done my 10,000th book by that time, right? So I started telling people, oh, I would try this, 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 and this. And everybody knew something more than me. They sounded like they knew more than me, right? They're telling me, oh, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, you're not doing it right. And then I started to realize slowly, I said, these guys, none of these people know what they're talking about. Like, none of them know anything, right? And then I started to slowly realize that I knew as much or more than most people and had way more experience than they did. And I had been doing it longer, and I had access to better equipment, and I understood it better. I thought, hey, hold on, maybe I'm not as dumb as I thought, right? And then I started doing stuff, and I started showing things to other people, and they said, no, man, you're doing things no one else has even dreamt of. This just isn't happening anywhere. Yeah. So he said, well, maybe I can buy some from you, like my LCS guy. And I don't know if you know Comic Tom and Russ, these guys online, if you see their stuff. They said, hey, can we buy some stuff? Can we use your things? I said, yeah. And then other people started asking me for more and more. I said, look, I'm okay handing you some stuff. I don't want to ship chemicals in the mail to you. I burn my fingers. I'm bleeding sometimes when I do this, so maybe, I had to sort of rethink what I could send and how I could do it. And then I sort of said, well, I told my wife, give me $1,200 to start the business. And if I make my $1,200 back by the end of the year, we'll call it a success. And if not, I won't do it. But I want to use my laser. I'm going to cut out some of these boards, and I want to use my water jet cutter, and I want to chamfer this stuff and do this. My wife said, you're nuts. Like, you're going to Africa, you're going to Scotland, you're traveling all the time. There's no way you can do all this stuff. And I said, well, I'll give me a shot. And then here I am. And then we're just we're talking, right? So
absolutely. We're talking. And I would never have even dreamed of wet cleaning a book until I saw you do it. I was like, what? But then again, I was just starting out, I'm just starting out.
Bad comments I got, like when I first started this, people said, this guy is absolutely crazy. You're risking all your books. Don't listen to him. He's just pranking you. I mean, that was a lot of the comments I got at first. And I said, I've been washing books in my bathtub for years and soaking them. I'm pretty sure it's fine if you know what you're doing. And so that was where that, came from. I'm like, why do these people say it's dangerous? Like, I do it pretty much constantly, but.
Well, folks, I sort of hate to admit that I lost audio towards the end of this video, so I apologize for having to stop a little bit early, but I hope you did enjoy the part that you did get to see. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.